with another Dostoevsky video. This is a continuation of the Dostoevsky series. My name is Ash and I'm here with Naz. We are both psychologists and we are interested in psychology. That's me being enthusiastic. All right. I'm trying to be enthusiastic, but I'm not.
Today.
I am not enthusiastic.
Okay. Are you enthusiastic about making the video though?
I can be. So anyway, we are here to discuss one of Dostoevsky's shortest. Is this the shortest story? I'm not sure. No, I don't think it is. But it's one of the shortest stories called Bobok. It's a funny name, and it doesn't really make sense.
Does it not? Okay, so we'll go into that. Okay. So let's start with the first sip. Okay, so first sip is where we talk about what the story is. Okay, so what's the story about? But before we do that...
What's the story in Balamori?
What's the story in Balamori? Wouldn't you like to know?
I had to say that. Yeah.
Okay, so before we do that, let's talk about the sort of the copies that we have read.
Yeah.
Sort of just very quickly, very briefly. So I have this book from Penguin Classics, and it has the 3 stories together, so the 3 short stories together, which includes The Gambler, Bobok, and Bobok. Sorry, not Bobok, that was the movie.
Yeah, Bobok.
Bobok. And Nasty Story. And yours is?
My copy is the Penguin Classics, and because this is one of the shorter stories of Dostoevsky, it's usually included with other stories.
Mm-hmm.
So in this case, it's included with The Gambler, and it even says here The Gambler and other stories. If you can see it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's included in this book. I think the translation from the Penguin Classics is okay. It's a fine, understandable translation. Is yours? Who is the translator of yours?
So,
is that Penguin as well?
Yeah, Penguin Classics.
Yeah, different covers, huh?
Yeah, just different covers. I think mine's quite sort of an older
old.
version. Yours is more of a new version. How did you find the translation? Did you find it sort of like...
I think generally the Penguin Classics translations are fine when it comes to Dostoevsky.
Right, yeah.
But like I said in the previous video, I think the translation by these 2 guys, one of them is called Peever. I can't remember the name now. These guys are probably the best. But yeah, I'm fine with the Penguin Classics. They're okay. Yes.
Okay, so first sip. Let's make a start.
Yeah.
This is it the shortest stories?
I don't think it is.
Story of the stories?
You mean the shortest Dostoevsky?
Yes.
No, I don't think so.
No,
I recently read a very short story called An Honest Thief.
And that was shorter than this?
I think I get a feeling that it was really short. I don't know.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So anyway, this is quite short, right?
Yeah.
And so let's start with the story. What is the story about?
So from my point of view, when I first read it, it didn't really make sense to me.
Before you start, sorry, are you going to have any spoilers yet?
No.
Okay, no spoilers.
I'm just going to say my first impressions of it.
Before you give your impression, can you just tell us what the story was?
I think, you can't really comment much. I think it's just Dostoevsky's commentary on society as a whole, I think.
Right.
That's my view of it, yeah.
But what is the story about? So
it's about a writer
who's
not taken seriously, I think, by publishers. They reject. He's constantly rejected, and it looks like he's losing the plot.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So if I was to sort of explain to a friend without spoilers, well, I mean, there's not much of a spoiler anyway, I don't think, with this, because it's quite a continuous story. But it'll be something like, this is about a man So he goes and hears people talk in the grave. Hears people, dead people talk in the grave. So this is the whole story, basically.
Yeah.
Now let's move on, and
Yeah.
we may have spoilers now if you haven't read the book.
I would also add to that if I was to tell someone to read it, I would also say that don't expect much from it, because me going to Dostoevsky, I always expect some new psychological insight from his stuff. But in this case, I felt like I didn't really take away anything. However, thinking about it, I read it last year. Thinking about it recently, and I thought, okay, there may be some lessons or points in the story, but we get to that. Yeah.
Okay, so initially the story starts with this man who is sort of like a writer, but he's not very successful, and I believe he's drunk, because the story starts with somebody asking him, when are you going to get sober, or something like that. So he seems to be a drunk, and although he says in the book that he doesn't get offended easily, he does seem to get offended by that comment. So it's sort of like he sort of plays on his mind a little bit because he doesn't like that comment from a friend.
I think that's classic Dostoevsky. His characters are always, not always, but you expect to see characters flawed and contradictory.
Yes.
They contradict themselves, and I think that's what he found in human beings. He thought that human beings they're so contradictory. Even in Brothers Karamazov, we see that a lot.
Yeah. Yes.
Or in his other novels, you know.
Yes. Yeah. So
we see that. I'm going to add to that. We see that like religious characters often question their faith, and they find themselves in disbelief sometimes, and then unreligious characters who are against religion sometimes find themselves questioning their rationality, and they go through delusions and this kind of stuff that they don't believe in. So yeah, it's classic Dostoevsky where we see contradictions in characters.
yes, yeah, I think so too. So this man, he then goes into the so he talks about a portrait of himself, and a mole, I think 2 moles on his forehead, that's been very well captured by this painter, and he's surprised about, sort of a surprise, but also not surprised about how it's been captured, how it's been painted, and so much attention has been paid to these moles on his forehead, on this man's forehead, this drunk man's forehead. His name is Ivan. So Ivan then moves, the story moves on with him as he goes to the graveyard, and he sort of lays on one of the gravestones, and he hears muffled noises. And then sort of we and Ivan himself, we hear about what these people under the graves are saying. But these people seem to move about as well. And they talk, they have conversations.
So yeah, the way I saw the story was, we have this character called Ivan Ivanich or something like that.
Right. Yeah.
This writer, right? And he's constantly rejected.
Not sure how you pronounce it. Is it Ivan?
Ivan.
Yeah.
Ivanov. I've written it somewhere.
Right.
But it's not important. What's important is he, on this journey that he has, thinking to himself, and he's not happy with the way people treat him, and he winds up at the funeral. Right?
Yeah.
And here he is at this funeral, and then he hears this funny word called Bobok. Bobok.
Yeah.
Is that before he gets to the funeral?
Yeah, I think so. I think he
so
says
it's the voice that drags him to the funeral, right? It's that funny sound.
Obviously, you read it a while ago, and
Yeah.
I read it, I think, a few weeks back. I can't remember. I don't think the voice takes him or leads him to the funeral.
Right.
But I think he does say that sort of he's been hearing, as if something on the back of his mind is saying Bobok.
Yeah, so he hears this nonsense word, Bobok. It doesn't mean anything, but I've looked it up, and in Russian it means little bean, I think.
Right.
But it's
as in bean.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
But I think it's also it's a nonsensical word. It doesn't mean anything. It's just nonsense, right?
Okay.
It doesn't. The word doesn't have any meaning. I think in this context, it's just that he feels like I'm hearing this nonsense. It doesn't mean anything to the character. But anyway, he winds up at the funeral and he realizes that he can hear the dead speak, right? And this is not in the afterlife. This is people in the graves, and this is apparently in this context, they still have conscious, even though they're dead.
Yeah.
They still have conscious, and some of them they don't even realize they're dead, but some of them know that they're dead, and there are others who don't even accept that they're dead. They deny it. But what we know is that these people are dead. They're in the graves, right?
Yeah.
And he's there, and he can hear their conversations. Now, this is where this is the peak of the story. This is the main part of the story, that we are with this character in this funeral, and he can hear their conversations.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So reflections. Okay. Reflections and thoughts. What did you? Now it's time for you to talk about what you thought about the story. What are your reflections? What do you think
I think
was being conveyed to you?
Yeah, I think for me the main part of the story is the actual conversations that the dead are having in the funeral, in their graves. I think that's what the story is trying to tell us. So now I get to the actual meaning of the story for me, was that we realize when we hear the conversations that although the people are dead, they're still the same. Their conversations are the same as the living. They still have the same fears. They still gossip. They still have these pointless conversations. Because
Sorry, can I just add? We are obviously going to have spoilers now, right? So because we're a bit late now,
Yeah.
but
But yeah. Anyway.
forgot to say. Okay. Yeah. Sorry,
Yeah.
you were saying.
So when we think of death, we think of it as after when people die, there's this mystery, profound place and experience, and we imagine if people they pass the stage of death, and if they see each other, they will have deep conversations about the meaning of life, about philosophy. But what happens here is they don't. They're still gossiping. They're still having the same fears. They're still having the same useless conversations about who is, I don't know, richer and who's got more money. And so I think what Dostoevsky is trying to tell us is we humans, we are so embedded in this life that even when we die, we're still going to be the same. Although we imagine that when we die, things will have more meanings for us. We hear of people in their deathbeds, and they reflect on their life, and they think, oh, if only I did this or that. From Dostoevsky's point of view, no, you would say that. But wherever you are, we're still human beings. We still have the same gossips and fears and concerns. It's a funny story in a way. I think it's a comedy, but it's dark humor, and at the same time, there's that meaning to it. What is your view of it?
I first of all, I love that you talk about how they're under the ground and they're still concerned about their status. Yeah. So it just shows how shallow they are. It's just, you think, come on, this is everything. We always hear people saying, we say ourselves, don't be materialistic. It's just for this world. And, but these people are doing that in their grave. Like, it's stupid. Why do they have status in their graves? But anyway, I think I have a slightly different view on this. I think overall, the story itself can be quite confusing, and I think not many people know what to think of it, and I didn't. And it took me so long to think about what the story, because Dostoevsky is so deep in what he tells you and his stories, you want to find something about this, and it's difficult. So that was challenging for me. But my reflections, if I was to go back to your question, now, remember at the start of the story, there's there's a section where he talks about Ivan. He talks about these madhouses, or first madhouses that were built by the French, right? So it's as if he's questioning, there's a conflict, or there's a question about what is sane and what is insane, right? So, because remember, he's a drunk himself, so people don't take him seriously. You know, somebody has the nerves to come up to him and say, you know, when are you going to sober up? And, you know, so I think he's trying to sort of play around with our understanding of what is sane and what is insane, what is mad, what is not, right? So when these people, so leading on now, bear that in mind, when people go in, when Ivan hears people talk, dead people talk in the grave, he hears one of them at some point question their interactions. One of them is asking the other dead person, is saying, well, how come we're moving here? We shouldn't be moving, right? And how come we can smell other people decaying? We shouldn't be smelling those. And this man and this other gentleman who's died, I think he's a general, he says, well, you know, there's a philosopher who has said that we have consciousness. Our consciousness continues.
So all of these are taking place in the graves?
In the grave, right.
Yeah.
So these are conversations
These are
from
the
the
dead
grave.
people?
Yes.
Now they're talking?
Now they're talking.
And one of the dead people is a general?
Yes.
And there is also a dead philosopher?
No.
Okay.
No, thank you. So,
Yeah.
so one of them is the general, right?
Yeah.
So one of the dead people asks the general about why they're moving. How come we're moving in the grave? We shouldn't be able to move. How come we're talking? We're
So they're
dead.
questioning their state, right?
Yes,
Okay.
they're questioning their
There's
current state.
yeah. Okay.
And this general then replies, well, there is a philosopher, and the philosopher is still alive, I think,
Yeah.
right, who has said that our consciousness continues for about 2-3 months after we die. Okay, and they're like, oh, okay, what about the smell? We can smell decay. And it's like, oh, well, that's the moral stench, right?
Ah, I see. So even when they're in their graves, they're still philosophizing about their state, and they still talk about moral.
Yeah.
So
But morality,
morality-
is very much tied to philosophy. Okay.
and we expect morality to be when you're living, not when you're dead, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So what part of that stands out to you?
Yes. So I think I think this is a very thought-provoking story when you think of it this way, because I think what we are seeing is that we have a philosopher, apparently, if they're right, if we take it as face value, there's a philosopher who's saying our consciousness continues after death, right? And this is what's happening, right? This is real, it's happening. If we take it as something that's happening. If that's the case, how come if somebody's saying this is a philosopher, but when Ivan is hearing these, he's probably going to be classed as a fool or somebody who is mad, right? So what's the difference? Is it because he's just drunk? So what is it, the status of people that makes them a philosopher or not a philosopher?
Or is it that they're dead, but the philosopher is alive?
So the philosopher is alive,
Yeah.
right? If
I
they're
don't know.
dead,
I think these are.
so if
I'm
they're
not
dead,
following this.
okay.
Yeah.
So if let's say if they are really talking,
Yeah.
and Ivan is actually hearing them talk,
Yeah.
okay, and the philosopher has said that the consciousness continues for about 2-3 months. Okay, if this is true, then who are we to say? Who is to say who is mad and who is not mad? How come when somebody says that about dead people, that they can talk and they have consciousness, one becomes a philosopher, but one becomes a drunk and nobody takes him seriously?
Okay.
So is it about the status of people? Are we judging people and their ideas based on their status? Now, there's also the other side, the other perspective that you could say, actually, none of this is happening, right? And, you know, they're dead, they're not talking, and this is just Ivan hearing them.
So he's imagining it. Is
He's
that what
just
you're saying?
imagining, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Okay.
So then if that's the case, I think then it goes back to the philosophy and science and the differences between them. I think from Dostoevsky's work, we know that obviously he was a philosopher, right? Well, very keen on philosophy, and that I think he tried to sort of put a lot of what he thought into stories. Now, is he trying to say that we we cannot compare science with philosophy. So when somebody's dead, philosophy could say one thing, but it can never be proven with science. So we don't know. And depends on which approach you take, then you believe what you want to believe. So if you're a scientist, for example, you think, no, he's mad and they're dead. Okay? But if you're a philosopher, or if you believe in things that we cannot maybe scientifically understand, then do you then agree and say, maybe he's not mad, maybe he is hearing these things, maybe there's a consciousness? I think what he's trying to say is that with philosophy, it's limitless. There is no limit to imagination.
I don't agree with that, because even with philosophy, you still have to be logical, and there's also reason, isn't it? But anyway, I think there's so many ways you can look into it, but I try to not look into it too deeply. I try to, in this case, I take it at face value, and for me,
Could be.
at face value, this is it. I don't think it's that deep. I think it's just, look, people are dead and they're still the same.
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah.
Could be just like you said. It could be me again trying to give it a meaning, because all of his work has been so deep. What I've read from Dostoevsky have been so deep. So maybe I'm trying to find a meaning to it. Maybe that's the case. But so anyway, any other reflections?
No, not for me. This is a short story. I guess anybody can take what they want from it.
That's true. Yes.
Yeah, not much to it really. Maybe at some point in the future I'll come back to it and try to maybe read it again and in more depth. But it did not, to me, it didn't come across as one of those very deep. I mean, his other short stories, like The Dream of a Ridiculous Man, that was so deep, and I think that's one of the stories that I will always be reading and rereading. I didn't get the same feeling with Bobok.
With Bobok, yeah.
Yeah, so I'll move on. Yeah.
Okay, so let's go to last drop. Obviously you shared your thoughts or your final thoughts. I have some questions for you. Okay. My question is, what did you think about the title of the book?
I think it was I never thought about it. I think it's okay. I think it's the title Bobok is basically a nonsense word. It doesn't mean anything. So yeah, I don't know. It's fine.
Okay.
If I had, would I have named it anything else? Maybe something to do with the dead.
Okay.
But can I ask you the same, or do you want me to ask you after?
You can ask me if you want.
What do you think of it?
Title of the book. So Bobok. I don't know what to think of it, just like you.
It sticks to your mind because it's one of those words like Bobok.
It just, like, when he says, I can hear it at the back of my mind.
Yeah,
like,
you can hear it too.
I can hear it too. Yeah, Bobok. Like, it's just, and I can hear it. So maybe it is suitable for the story. Maybe, like you said, maybe the story is just a little story. There's no meaning, not much meaning to it.
We can get any story and think, constantly trying to dig it to find deeper meanings into it. It gets to the point where then where's the line? I mean,
but that's what we do, analyze.
Yeah.
And there's no right or wrong.
There is no right or wrong.
Just like the philosopher.
As long as it makes sense.
Well, yeah. Yeah, well, I'm not
then.
gonna question what makes sense. But anyway, so my next question is: would you change anything about the book?
About
the story.
The story. It's not even a book.
Yeah, I know. The story.
It's some people. I've heard that some people mistake it for a chapter. So they read one of the stories and they get to the Bobok and they think it's just part of the chapter and they get really confused.
Okay.
What was the question?
Is there anything that you would change about the story? That could be anything,
No,
right?
I don't care too much about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I maybe would have liked more on it, more context.
Yeah.
To help me. 150 years later, I think people are still struggling to understand what this story is about. So it's not as clear as the rest of them. So maybe more context or longer, maybe.
Yeah.
last question. Do you think we have consciousness engraved?
No, I don't. Personally, I don't think so.
Okay.
And do you?
No, I don't think we do. I don't think we do.
Would you have changed anything about the book?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. So maybe more context.
More context.
Maybe a little
Okay.
bit longer, not too long, but a little bit longer.
All right.
Okay. So is that why you weren't enthusiastic about this? Because you're not sure about the book, the story itself? Because you came here, you said you're trying to be enthusiastic.
No, usually I read stories and I can relate in some way to it,
Okay.
and I get enthusiastic about it. I'm not enthusiastic. I guess I'm not enthusiastic in general. But anyway, yeah. So, but in this story, I didn't find anything relatable except the author's view of how we are as human beings. You know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have any questions for me?
No.
Okay. Well, then that's it.
All right. So until the next
Um,
book
story.
story.
Yeah.